I am Dr. Eli Camp. Welcome. This is my podcast, Vital Wisdom. And this is where I talk about health, wellness, homesteading, raising children, and lots of other topics, all from the perspective of vitalism. I believe I've seen and taught others how the body can heal itself if it's given what it needs, it's not poisoned, and the innate healing ability of the body has been supported, not suppressed. It is my intention to bring what I have learned in my life, especially the last 24 years of being a physician, to help you be your own best doctor. Hope you enjoy the episodes, and thanks for being here. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Vital Wisdom with me, Dr. Eli Camp. And today I have a special guest, Dr. Leslie Cisar. And we are just going to talk today about stuff. We'll see what comes up. As always, you know that the basis, the premise of everything I talk about with my podcast is about the idea that our bodies were designed to heal themselves like all the other organic beings and entities and life forms on this planet. It's how we're put together. And, you know, as long as we're giving our human bodies what they need and we're not poisoning it and we are stimulating that innate healing ability and other stuff I've talked about, we truly have hope and we have options to reach a higher potential of life than many people are experiencing right now. So welcome to Vital Wisdom, and tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell our people.
Well, thanks, Dr. Camp, for having me on. My name is Leslie Cisar, and I live in the Chicago suburbs, and I practice nationwide. I specialize in helping women with chronic migraines recover their health so they stop getting migraines.
Well, that is quite the job. So many people suffer from migraines and headaches of all different kinds, and I'm so glad you're doing what you do. So we went to the same school, for those of you who might not know. We graduated just a couple of years apart, I think, didn't we?
Yeah, I think you graduated in 05 and I graduated in 2010. So yeah, we just missed each other.
Yeah, we did. And together, Dr. Cisar and I have been involved from the beginning with the Naturopathic Medicine Institute, which at the end of this podcast, there's a little blip about how you can learn more from the Naturopathic Medicine Institute for those of you who like the things that I talk about and my guests talk about. So I'm just going to jump right in because I think there's a hot topic out there that there's all kinds of mixed emotions about it and mixed feelings. What do you think about this whole idea of make America healthy again? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the past year has been uh, a jaw-dropping year because we've reached a critical mass due to COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So enough people realized during COVID that they were being lied to by the, if you want to call it, medical establishment.
Mm-hmm.
And this really shocked people tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
And they really started questioning what they have been told their whole lives and what they have done for themselves to, so, quote unquote, keep themselves healthy. And then also what they've been doing to keep their children so-called healthy, right? So, because a critical mass of people started to realize that what they were being told is actually false when it comes to health and disease, it gave an opportunity for people to actually be heard when they talk about what is actually true about what causes disease and how you restore your health and what it means to be in a state of health. So you saw an explosion, particularly in the podcast world, of predominantly medical doctors who are much more aligned with the naturopathic approach, getting the opportunity to go on some really, really widely viewed podcasts and get the message out that, frankly, naturopathic doctors have been saying for over 100 years. And that's only because naturopathy is about 100 years old. Before that, you had the homeopaths and you had the eclectics and so on. So you can go all the way back to Greece, ancient Greece, right, where you see the truth being told about health and disease. So one of the most prominent people, uh, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his "Make America Healthy Again" presidential slogan, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it has been just jaw-dropping. I mean, I really never thought I would live to see the day that I would hear on, millions of views, see that millions of people had consumed information that is in direct opposition to pharmaceutical advertising, the pharmaceutical lobby, pharmaceutical industry, major, all of the major conventional medical schools, establishments. I'm in the Chicago area, home of the AMA. Abbott Laboratories. I mean, I can throw a stone and hit a pharmaceutical company because there are so many Abbott affiliated companies here
Mm-hmm.
within just a few miles of where I live. It's a big pharmaceutical industry. You have in Chicago the number of medical schools, Northwestern Medical Center, Rush Medical, right, home of the AMA. I mean, I'm living in just a hotbed of the medical establishment, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a Facebook group for, area moms, right? North Shore suburban moms is what it's called. And within the past year, the number of women posting in that Facebook group, I've probably been a member for 10 years in this Facebook group. The number of women posting, asking questions. Do
Mm-hmm.
you vaccinate? What about, what about this HPV vaccine? What about antibiotics? What about, my child keeps getting these ear infections.
Mm-hmm.
What about ADD? What about autism? I've never seen anything like it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you have this groundswell. There's a critical mass of people that are starting to question. But then you have the anger.
Mm-hmm.
You have people infuriated when they hear "Make America Healthy Again."
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely infuriated. And this, I think, is something that we really need to understand what's going on within sort of our human psychology, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think particularly those of us that are, you know, in the naturopathic field or people that are more aligned with the naturopathic approach, it can be very difficult to understand, well, why are you upset about make America healthy again, right? But you can see the tremendous amount of anger that this generates. Just a few weeks, prior to you and I taping this today, um, RFKJ did a press conference where he talked about the tragedy of severe autism. And
Yeah,
I
I
know
saw
this
it.
is a field
Yeah.
that you work extensively in.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about how a severely autistic child grows up to be severely disabled.
Mm-hmm.
We'll need some sort of, if the family can't, and a parent can't take care of a child forever, right?
Right.
They're
Right.
going to need institutional care,
Right.
24/7 care. And they're not going to grow up to live their full potential by any stretch of the
No.
imagination, right?
No.
And he said they're not going to pay taxes. Now, again, paying taxes, right, signals that you are contributing to the society. right? That you are a part of this project and you're a contributor in some way, right? That's kind of what he was signaling with that. Not that he was, oh, the only worth that people have is to put
Right.
money into the coffers, right? But it's just
Right.
a way of signaling that somebody has contributed, is able to contribute, right?
Right.
And he talked a lot about, just their human potential being, horribly thwarted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
After that occurred, my Facebook feed was filled with angry friends.
Mm-hmm.
How dare he say that about my son?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw it too.
Number one, I was saddened to see how many of my friends on Facebook, which a lot of them are acquaintances, you know how it is on Facebook, people you haven't talked to
Yeah.
in,
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe decades since high school or something like that.
Right.
It was a wake-up call for me to see how many people in my feed had an autistic child. And then how angry this was, how angry they got when he said this.
Yeah.
And I thought, if this doesn't really, signal this conflict that we're living in right now. And our mentor, the late great Dr. Jim Sensenig, right? He would always talk about, we're living in two different paradigms, right? There's a group of people that see the world completely differently than the other group of people. And you can't bridge that gap,
Not very easily.
not
No.
very easily.
No. So what do you what do you think? I'm very willing to understand the world from other people's perspective. I'm a homeopath. And one of the ways that I can find a remedy for someone is to quickly understand what their perspective of life is and how they experience it. And I have to tell you, I struggle with what seems to be so obvious to me with the lies that have been told. And all you have to do is look at nature to understand the laws of nature. They're clear and evident, and when you manipulate them and you violate them, you end up with things going wonky, right? You get disease, you get trees that don't grow, you get unhealthy soils, we get, farms that aren't producing what they're supposed to. We get a society that doesn't function as well as a society can function, right? So I have a hard time personally interacting with folks and understanding their perspective when they have bought it all hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah.
Why do you think they're angry? What's up with that? Why the anger?
Well, people have been told a lie. And when you have been lied to and you haven't realized that you've been lied to, you are now faced with a dilemma, because it's very humbling to realize I I was I was able to be lied to,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
We always think, right? We always think, well, these other people, I would never buy that, right?
Right.
We're always too smart to have the wool pulled over our eyes, right?
Right.
So when we have been lied to, in order to realize that, we have to humble ourselves.
Mm, yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
very difficult. It's very difficult to do that. I know that from my own personal painful experience, right?
Too. Sure.
So, in order to change paradigms, as our mentor would say, there has to be some humbling of oneself. And then there is also a regret. There's a conviction that takes place,
Mm,
because I was lied to, and then I acted according to the lie.
right.
There's some amount of, I did this.
Yes.
I contributed to the problems that I'm experiencing.
Yes. That's hard for people.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult. So, in the case of, again, if we want to stay kind of on the autism
Mhm.
thread, It's very clear from case reports. I mean, an uncounted number of mothers have said, my child was fine until they got XYZ vaccine.
Yep.
And it's not just one vaccine, it's not just the MMR, which is commonly touted, although that's a very high contender. It's
Yes.
plenty of other vaccines. And so over and over again, when you hear this, right? Well, I took my child in for the vaccines and they weren't the same. Immediately, the mom next to that mom goes, well, I took my kid in for vaccines. I drove my child there. I held them while the nurse put the needle in my precious child's arm. I mean, what do you have to go through psychologically, right, within your own conscience to say, I drove my child to the slaughter?
Right.
I mean, that's a big mountain to climb psychologically. Very, very big mountain to climb. So, you have millions and millions of people that have driven their child to that sort of Russian roulette pediatric appointment. How do you listen, right? The cognitive dissonance that would occur
Mm-hmm.
in any human hearing, well, my child was never the same.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very unpleasant. It's very unpleasant. And so to cope with that unpleasantness, right, we deny. We go into denial.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we do with a lot of unpleasant, a lot of unpleasant emotions, right? We go into denial.
Yes. Yes. How could it be? How could it be that so many people do this thing because they're told it's the right thing to do, it's the safe thing to do? How could all of those people possibly be wrong?
Right.
Well, they are. It's like, right? It's just, I agree. Yes. I mean, I've spent 20 years having parents say that to me. My child was fine until, and I saw it again with COVID.
Yeah.
That I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw what was happening. And now we have how many people who have died? We have how many people with heart and cardiac issues now, with autoimmune, with turbo cancers, with
Chronic headaches.
chronic headaches, like all of this stuff because they injected something, right? We still don't really even know the true story about all of that into the bodies of humans. And they lied and they said, this is safe. You need this. We need this to save the human population. Meanwhile, in what is it, Haiti, they had zero vaccination and the absolute lowest occurrence of COVID on the planet. Like, it's insane. It's insane. So, okay. So, what we've got is cognitive dissonance. We have two different paradigms. We have people who simply cannot accept that when all of the chips fall, they made a decision that affected their children or their family in a negative way. And here comes this guy who wants to take poisons out of food. He wants vaccines actually placebo controlled, studied. Like, I would think this would be cause for celebration. And we don't have to talk about his relationship with other political things. Just this idea that he is saying, can we prove that when we say something's good for somebody, it actually is? Can we remove things that we know are poison? Like, I love him.
Well, this goes back to what causes disease. And we have been told a lie. The lie that we have been told is that we get sick because of bad luck.
Right.
Now it's called genetics,
Right. Right.
right, which is a scientific way of saying bad luck,
Bad luck.
right? But
Yes.
it sounds better.
Sure.
Doesn't sound so 1800s,
Right.
right? So if you're sick because of bad luck and somebody says, we're going to make you healthy again, wouldn't you be infuriated?
Mm.
How dare you?
I'm right.
I am so unlucky in my life that I have, chronic migraines. I have fibromyalgia. I have an autoimmune I am so unlucky. And you're just going to tritely, spout off, make me healthy again. How dare you?
How dare you?
How dare you?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the response that we're seeing because people have been told a lie about why they're sick. I believed that lie when I first started getting migraines.
Hmm.
And somebody said, well, did you drink enough water today? Did you eat lunch? Like what you, oh, would I get infuriated? How dare you? I don't have anything to do with this.
Mm-hmm.
This just struck me out of the blue.
Mm-hmm.
How dare you? So this is really infuriating people. And not only do we have this lie being told to people for, hundreds of years, but you have the pharmaceutical industry reinforcing this.
Mm-hmm.
So on my podcast, I have an episode that says why I don't wear the purple migraine ribbon.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Yeah.
So every disease now has a ribbon.
Yeah.
Chronic migraines is a purple one.
Okay.
All right. Well, why don't I wear the purple migraine ribbon? Because the organization that promotes the purple migraine ribbon is a front for it's a subsidiary of another organization that's funded by the pharmaceutical industry and the medical research industry, right? So what they have done is they have turned everyone's disease into their identity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm just unlucky or it's my genetics, I've just been struck down through, no fault or no reason. Well, now this is a part of me.
Mm-hmm.
This is now my identity. So now you're challenging a core piece of me. You're even denying that a core piece of me even exists by
Right.
saying that I may not have this.
Right.
So talk about cognitive dissonance and talk about anger,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have, I had a client, this was several years ago, but she was involved, in the migraine research advocacy movement. And then, she found me, we started working together. Um, she stopped getting, chronic migraines, but she was involved in her local sort of migraine, chapter type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So they put together, the purple migraine ribbon people put together a walk to raise money for migraines. This was in Florida, and they had the walk in August, and they walked on a hot tar pavement for a couple miles. This is migraine sufferers. Now, as someone that has suffered from migraines, you want to take the typical migraine sufferer, put them outside, and I mean, it wasn't January and February, it was like July, or
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't
August.
January in Florida, it was like July.
Yeah.
Take a migraine sufferer, chronic migraine sufferer, put them out in the hot sun, march them on asphalt where you're breathing in the off-gassed asphalt. It's even hotter. I mean, I can't think of a better way to give somebody a migraine.
True. True.
Somebody who's never had a migraine in their life might get a migraine. But this was the fundraising for
For the
migraine
migraine.
awareness, right? I was like, I'd hate to be at the finish line, there with all these migraine sufferers after they do this march, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy.
But this is so we have this layer to it, right? So, you and I took a class by Dr. Nick Baratovich
Yes,
called
we did.
Physician Heal Thyself,
Yes, we did.
right?
Yeah.
It was second quarter
Yeah.
at Southwest College, right? Second quarter in the curriculum. And the course was designed to kind of wake up us little new students who were just entering the profession into healing ourselves, right? Because you can't help someone heal and restore their health. You can't be a guide to somebody on a journey that you've never walked the path on, right? So
Exactly.
it was a course that was designed to kind of at least wake us up to that fact.
Yes.
And he told us a story. I'd be curious if he told you guys this story, but he told this story where one week he had two new patients that both had lupus diagnoses. So it was kind of notable.
Mm-hmm.
Two lupus patients come in the door, new patients come in the door in 1 week. And so, he does the intake, he starts working with them. One woman, the lupus goes into remission. Other woman, no progress. I mean, month after month, he's, racking his brain. He's, researching, talking to colleagues. Nothing is helping this woman.
Mm-hmm.
So one day she leaves her follow-up appointment, and she was his last appointment of the day. And so she leaves. He just kind of finishes up his office tasks, and he leaves shortly thereafter. He goes out to his car, and he sees in the parking lot another vehicle with a vanity license plate. The vanity license plate was lupus. He saw that his patient was sitting in that car talking on the phone and had not left the parking lot. Right? I mean, how are you going to get better when you have to get a new license plate?
God forbid.
Talk about identity.
He didn't tell us that story. He told us another one. Different people, different diagnoses, same concept, right?
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one.
But this has, unfortunately, this has, if I can use the word infected, this has infected the naturopathic profession as well.
It has, sadly.
Sadly, I have colleagues that teach in all of the different schools. This is
Right.
this is not calling out one school over another. This appears, from what I'm told, to be universal across the board within our naturopathic medical schools. The percentage of students who have IEPs or accommodations for testing, turning in assignments, accommodations for what they do in the clinic with patients because of diagnoses like ADHD, right? Now, to me, you're like in naturopathy, ADHD, this is something that's treatable and you put in remission and then you live your best life.
Every day.
Right? But we have students in our medical schools who are not going to like the student clinic and getting treated for, their anxiety, their ADHD, whatever is holding them back from attaining their full potential at the school. No, they have, enforceable by law accommodations.
Wow.
So like how are you going to treat a child with ADHD if it's your identity that you have ADHD? That's going to be a hard that's going to be a hard hill to climb, right?
Yes. Yes, it doesn't make you an expert in it, which is the sort of a fallacy. People, right, flock to folks. Oh, I have this diagnosis, so that makes me more capable of treating. No, no. If you say, I used to have the symptoms of this because I was unhealthy and didn't understand how to stimulate my body to heal itself. And I recovered from this set of symptoms. That's the person you're looking for,
Right.
right? Yeah. So, what do you say to these people who are angry? Or do you just look at it and shake your head and what do you tell them?
Well, this is one of the major reasons why I started my podcast, because you can reach people. We have to reach people.
I agree.
People's lives are on the line here. I
I
mean,
agree.
this is outrageous. So, what I talk about is what is true. And this is what, Henry Lindlar, one of the grand philosophical founder of naturopathy said, you know, why do we get sick? It's not because we're unlucky. It's because we have lived in such a way that is counter to an environment that promotes human flourishing. So, we humans, we are highly, highly adaptable animals. We can live in a spectacular range of environments and thrive and flourish. If
Hmm.
you take a polar bear and move him to the equator, he's not going to last too long. But we
Right.
humans, we can live at the equator and we can live at the North Pole and
Right.
everywhere in between, and we can thrive. So it's not that there's just one way that a human needs to live in order to thrive, which which is another false belief that's very prominent within the natural medicine industry. You got to eat this way and you got it right. That
Exactly.
is also false, right?
Exactly.
But so there are many, many different ways that we humans can live and thrive. There's many different environments, many different ways, lifestyles, etc., that we can live in and thrive and reach our full potential. But the other thing about us humans is we have an ability to go against what we what is in our best interests.
Yes, we do. Looking for easy, efficient, least output reward.
Well, you know, I live in a neighborhood that's about 50 years old and it has a lot of skunks. So every night in the neighborhood Facebook group, everybody talks about all the skunks in the neighborhood because if you're walking at dusk, skunks, they're nocturnal, right? So if you're walking around the neighborhood at dusk, you're going to get all these, they're very cute. They're wiggle wobble, they're very
Yeah.
cute
Yeah.
little animals. Then you're going to run into a whole bunch of skunks if you're walking in my neighborhood at night. Skunks, being nocturnal, when you see them at night, okay, I may not be thrilled, but that's what they're supposed to do. If you see a skunk walking around at noon, that skunk is sick.
Right.
Right? Because a skunk cannot choose, yeah, today I feel like walking around at noon,
Right.
right?
Right.
They, right? They don't have the ability to override what environment they thrive in.
Right.
We do, right? So we can decide to stay up until 2 in the morning playing video games, right? This is not a lifestyle that's compatible with human flourishing because humans are not nocturnal animals. We are supposed to get up when the sun rises,
Right.
right? But we can override that. Now, we can choose to do something like that, and then we can live in a society that's directly counter to human flourishing as well. Like you mentioned, right? We got all these toxins in the environment, et cetera, that are man-made, et cetera, right? That are going to be counter to our human flourishing. But usually we are our own worst enemy with some of the things that we choose to do. So, uh, again, this also, in order to restore your health, you have to change. You have to change the environment that you're living in because you're having these symptoms because there's something about your environment, whether it's your physical environment, your mental, emotional, spiritual environment, that's out of alignment with what is best for human flourishing. And so you have to change that in order to restore your health.
Mm. It's hard for people.
It's very hard. It's
Hmm.
very hard. It's been very hard for me to do that.
Yeah, me too. And I've spent how many years? 25 from the day I started school and started learning about things that were not good for me or things that were good for me. Man, I made so many changes in those 4 years, probably things I didn't have to do, but I was frantic. Once I learned something was bad for me or something was good for me, once I figured out those puzzle pieces, man, I wanted to do it right away
Mhm.
because I want to live not just a long life, but a life, a high quality, right? I don't want to be in a wheelchair for the last 20 years on oxygen and getting all of my joints replaced and be on 20 meds that I have to carry a little bag around and like that I don't want to live into those years. I want to work my farm and raise my chickens and teach people and lay down and go to sleep one night and just not wake up because my body's tired and done and it's time to move on. But I would love, like, that's why I did that. But not everyone thinks about that. A lot of folks, I think, I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. They're very focused on today and what I have to do today and what I have to do tomorrow. And right, they have a routine and a system. And I mean, and people are so overcommitted that if you start to change the routine and disrupt their daily things that they have to do, they're like one square toothpick away from losing it and going off the deep end because they can't even imagine. They look back and they're like, how did I even get through every day up until this point? Right.
Well, I think that there's so many people that don't really believe they're worthy to feel good.
Yeah.
I think it's really a spiritual crisis that people have, in that they, they were um, raised in an environment where there was messaging around, you know, maybe they, were a bad person, bad kid.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, uh, there's some feeling that they don't deserve to feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Or, maybe they never really felt that good emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
That plays out in the physical body,
Mm-hmm.
right? We get used to feeling a certain way, and so that there's a comfort in the familiarity,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, if I've always felt bad emotionally, well, at least I know where I'm at,
Right.
right?
Right.
And you can see this in people where, right, nobody wants to be in a wheelchair on oxygen taking 20 medications. Nobody wants that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But number one, with the very first medication that's prescribed, the patient says, "Doctor, why did this happen to me?" And the doctor says, "I don't know.
Things happen.
Yeah, things happen. What do you expect? You're 50," or, whatever the answer is, right?
Yep.
It's the unlucky answer. And then if on the mental, emotional, spiritual side, I guess this is what I deserve.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So people will desperately try to change and suddenly sabotage themselves, right? I mean, self-sabotage, right? Who has not self-sabotaged,
Right. Right.
right? Where is that coming from? Right? It's coming from a very deep belief about ourselves that whatever we're trying to do, we shouldn't have.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And the more traumatic a childhood, the less aware your parents were in raising you, the messaging you were exposed to and told, the messaging you were given in school, depending on the school you went to, your peers, your colleagues, your friends, all of that shaped and molded each of us into what we believe about ourselves. Absolutely. Your relationship or lack of relationship with a higher being or a greater entity. Absolutely. We just took the case in my homeopathy group. So I run a 2-year training program. And one of the things that's very important when you're learning how to practice homeopathy, as you know, is case after case after case after case of people. So we took a case of a woman who had an incredibly difficult childhood in that emotions were not allowed to be shown in the home. If there was crying, they were sent to their room. If they were overly joyous, they were that was muted. There were no hugs. There was only this sort of constant input into the system of, you could have done it better. You got an A minus, you could have gotten an A plus. You took second place, you could have taken first place. Your room can be spotless, white glove inspection spot. So now as an adult, she has extreme chronic fatigue. Well, surprise, she's constantly not good enough. Constantly her emotions are bad. This belief system that she has about herself is really hindering her. It's like a anchor around her neck, dragging her down no matter how good she eats. And no, because she's baffled. She eats well, she exercises, she takes all the supplements, right? But still she doesn't feel well and can't get through the day. And nobody can figure it out. So she finally decided to give homeopathy a try. And as we heard the case, it just sort of mind-blowing to me how people get conditioned from a very young age from all different places.
Yeah. The mental, emotional, and spiritual condition is expressed in the physical body. And migraines is a condition that, it's a known condition where people might have a conflict at work, or they might have a big deadline, or, they get in an argument with somebody, boom, migraine. I mean, this is well documented, right? Not that every migraine is from what we would call stress, right? But I mean, most 90% of migraine sufferers, if not more, will say, oh yeah, sometimes I will get a migraine if I'm stressed. That's the word that's used, stressed out. All right.
Yeah.
And so in my work, if I'm not addressing that with my clients, we're not going to address all of the migraines.
Exactly.
Right. And this is the case. I mean, you could even take a condition like diabetes, which, it's a laboratory diagnosis, right? Whereas migraines, it's not a laboratory diagnosis. There's no findings on MRI that say this is a migraine, or there's no blood work that comes back that says this is a migraine. The diagnosis is based on the symptoms that are reported by the patient, right? But even if you take something like diabetes, which is just, your blood sugar's, higher than 126, boom, diagnosis, right?
Right.
Something that might seem very cut and dry. Find a diabetes patient that doesn't have a mental and emotional component that's contributing, not the only factor, certainly, but contributing to the eating habits and other lifestyle factors that have generated the insulin insensitivity.
Right.
You're going to be hard pressed.
Exactly. And so this is true whenever we have a set of symptoms that leads to a diagnosis.
Right.
Right. Other than acute, emergency stuff, right? You get in an accident and yeah, absolutely. So do you have a wrap up point with all of this, or can we go back to JFK?
Yeah, let's go back to JFK.
So I see him as a truth teller. And I see the same thing you're seeing, not necessarily in a Facebook group that I run, although I'm in quite a few groups because I teach a lot of classes, and I it's a way I can learn what my community around me wants to learn about, right? But in my day-to-day interactions outside of the virtual world, I absolutely am hearing the same things. How dare he suggest that this happen? And I think, well, that's exactly what he said he was going to do. Thank goodness he's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. He spent his whole life, his legal life, right? The work that he does and the things he gets involved with is setting these injustices right, exposing the lies and telling the truth. And you agree with me, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What can we tell people to maybe get them to take a breath and okay, feel the anger, but how can we open this little door in people's minds that maybe, just maybe, there's another path that that's quite different from the path that they're on that leads to a completely different place.
Yeah. I think the mistake that a lot of people make in our industry, natural medicine industry, is they become so exasperated with the people who are in the other paradigm, right? Who
Yes.
are, have been told the lie and aren't aware that they are living a lie, right? They get so exasperated. That's not going to be effective.
Right.
So I think that, like in my work, I really talk about this sort of this, I don't necessarily call it, the cognitive dissonance, but I talk a lot about different examples of how this cognitive dissonance gets set up and just shedding a little light on it, right? It's like a little light, a little light, a little light on the lie.
Okay.
I think the more we can talk about, success stories, a lot of people are, in our profession, we tend to not want to like toot our own horn or, we don't want to get too grandiose or that type of thing. And a lot of people struggle with getting, testimonials and things like that. But when somebody can hear time after time after time, boy, that person was getting a migraine, 20 times a month, just like me. And they said that they were terrified to start working with Dr. Leslie because they didn't know what was going to happen. And I'm really afraid to reach out to her too, right? The more that we can share the reality of people's experiences. When I record testimonials with my clients, I will ask them, like, what were you afraid of when we first started working together? And they'll chuckle and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I was really afraid you were going to have me do something crazy," or like, because that's part of the process, right?
Right.
I've I have, my health has had some horrible problems over the years, and I have been afraid to make a
Mhm.
change, right?
Mhm.
It can be very frightening to change. But if we can share, stories after stories after stories, and I think, and if we can very compassionately talk to people, and on a lot of podcasts that I've listened to over the past year, it's kind of this ranting and raving. Why don't they get it? They're so stupid, this and that. They're not stupid, right?
No,
They're
no.
living. They have been told this, like you say, you've been told this over and over and over again, and everybody is living like this. Why wouldn't you live like this?
Right. Exactly. All of those other people cannot possibly be wrong.
Right, right. So, Henry Lindlar, he talks about 6 things you have to do to restore the sick to health. And, I'm a big fan of his work. And the sixth thing that he says that we need to do to restore the sick person to health is my favorite thing. And I'm going to read what he says.
Okay.
He says, arouse the individual in the highest possible degree to the consciousness of personal responsibility and to the necessity of intelligent personal effort and self-help.
I love that.
Right?
I would have so hung out with him had I been alive at his time. It is,
Right?
in a nutshell, the secret, the key to the lock.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to arouse, right? There is this life force within everyone who wants to reach their potential, their God-given potential, whatever it may be, and fully inhabit the gifts, their God-given gifts. That's inside every single person. It's been beaten down in a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But can we arouse that spirit within people and just stoke that flame a little bit and a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more and a little bit more?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we have to do to bring people out of this lie. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, right, we can empathize with people. I can empathize with my own self-sabotaging activities. I can empathize with all of the fear that I've had around change, the difficulty that I have experienced to go against the grain within the culture, right? It's a lot easier to microwave something than to cook something from the grocery
Sure.
store, right?
Sure.
So all of these things, right? If we're honest with ourselves and how much we struggle, I see a lot of people again in the natural medicine industry itself, this big multi-billion industry that you and I are under the umbrella of. A lot of people present themselves like, I'm just living on top of this beautiful mountaintop and I'm doing my yoga every day and drinking my spring water, right?
Yeah,
That's
whatever.
that's a lie.
Whatever. I know.
You're not perfect. You struggle like everybody else struggles. And so I think, sharing that piece of ourselves, we have to humble ourselves too, especially as practitioners, right? We
Mm-hmm.
have to humble ourselves a little bit too, that, yeah, you know, I have clients that they cannot remember to take their herbal tincture that I recommend. They're like, oh, I cannot remember to take it
Right.
at breakfast. I can remember at dinner. Some lunch is 50-50, but breakfast I can't. And I tell them, oh, I have a hard time remembering to take things too,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Versus, how come you're not compliant,
Yes. Yeah, I
right?
don't I don't even allow the word compliant in my practice.
Right.
No way. When you take a magnifying glass and follow me around and watch me for a day, I'm the worst patient there is.
Right, right. So meeting people with compassion, being real about what we have actually gone through
Mhm.
in our own healing journeys,
Mhm.
right? And helping people, right? Just we're kind of carrying a little torch. We're all trying to get through this jungle, right? And we're carrying a little bit of a torch to light up a little tiny piece of the path.
Right.
And when we do that, we can bring people to this greater awareness that they have been lied to, unfortunately.
Yes. Well, I'm glad that you're a truth teller like I am and that we support other truth tellers. And what's the name of your podcast?
Healing Migraines Naturally with Leslie Cisar, ND,
Okay.
available on all podcast platforms and on my website.
Very cool. So those links will definitely, when we put this episode up, all those links will be added for those of you who might be wondering how you can connect with Dr. Caesar. And well, I can't believe that time went so quickly. It always happens when I talk to you. It's like I blink my eye and our time has just flown right by. So I think you already did this when you read Lynn Lar, but for the folks listening to this podcast, do you have any sort of final message that you'd like them to think about as they go about their day after they listen to this?
The number one thing that I tell people is you can feel better. You can make even a tiny change that is going to be health supporting, and your body will respond. It may not respond as quickly as you would like, right? Sometimes people have unrealistic expectations. Sometimes people don't realize the time that might be necessary for the body to fully heal. But if we make even a small health supporting change, the body will respond. I'm working with a new client right now. We just finished 2 weeks of work, and she's extraordinarily debilitated. She can no longer work. She's kind of hanging on, just living off of savings, desperately trying to figure out how she could go back to work. If she goes to the grocery store and the post office and maybe another store, she will come home and have to sleep for hours and probably have to sleep the next day. Constant 24/7 head pain. In 2 weeks, with a little tiny modification to her eating habits, because if she made big changes, it would be too much. So a little tweaking to her eating habits, and 2 drops of a digestive tincture with breakfast, lunch, and dinner. 2 drops. The normal dose is 90 drops. I said, take 2.
Mm-hmm.
In 2 weeks, she didn't crash after having a day of errands. She said, I was actually functional
Wow.
the
That's
next day.
big. That's big.
It's huge.
Yes.
I did run errands and I did need a nap, but I didn't have to nap as long. 2 relatively tiny changes. Other natural practitioners, they would have put her on 20 supplements. They would have had her do dramatic changes to her eating habits. That would have crashed her.
Oh, sure.
She,
Absolutely.
she would not be able to tolerate that level of change. So there is an aspect too where we have to know what amount of change can we tolerate and what amount of change is going to be actually doable. And when
Mm-hmm.
you line those 2 things up in a way that is health supporting, bringing the person back into alignment with the conditions for human flourishing, the body will respond.
Mm-hmm. Because we're self-healing.
Right.
Yes.
Everything else on the planet, like you said.
Well, what a wonderful thought, I think, to leave people with. Everybody can make a teeny tiny change. Everyone can do that. Teeny tiny, they start to accumulate, and then what's possible becomes clear. And once you know what's possible, you don't have to accept anymore what's always been, because you know that there's different possibilities. Well, thank you for being here today, and thank all of you for joining us, and definitely tune back in next week for our next episode. And I hope y'all enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for joining me today. For those of you who have written in, emailed, and are interested in my books and other offerings, I wrote The Unvaccinated Child as a resource guide for parents and caregivers to navigate childhood illnesses in a natural and healthy way. And while the intended group was the unvaccinated, it turns out it's an important resource for the vaccinated kids as well, since vaccines do not necessarily prevent illness. Smoke Rings is another book I wrote, and that's to help smokers support their health, regardless if they plan to quit or not. So for people who smoke, love a smoker, used to smoke, continue to smoke, this book helps you be your healthiest version. And when I say it is judgment-free, It is absolutely judgment free. You're free to make the choices you make. I'd just like you to find better health while you make those choices. My most recent book, Homeopathy, A Foundational Approach, is really great for someone, whether they're a complete beginner or they've already been practicing homeopathy. It starts at the beginning and it guides the readers through the basics and on into first aid and acute practice so you can start using homeopathy right away. That's the most important thing to me, is to get folks using homeopathy in their everyday life. My workshops and courses can be found at either ecampnd.com or longshadowsranch.net. Have a great week. Again, thanks for joining me and thanks for your support.